All right. Hey, everybody, it's me, JJ Panzer, your smart apartment advisor here, ready for another week's client call. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining me, everybody. I am, unfortunately, I have to tell you that I don't have anything more to tell you about AB 3088 today, and Denise will not be joining us because last week we talked about how she was going to have a massive call with the tenant bar in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and throughout California for the attorneys to get together and sort of come to a consensus about what this all really means to us and give us the best practice. And that call is actually happening now. So we had a conflict in that regard, and Denise cannot join us this week, but we will be able to have a little bit more information from her next week. I think they'll have quite a lot of that put together and ready for us to use in next week's call. So she has confirmed she'll be with us next week, and we'll be able to have a little bit more information. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit. There was an article that I sent you about, are people, is it really a mass exodus from San Francisco? Talk a little bit about, what the data says and how that may not be true. I hope it's not true. It seems like it's anecdotal evidence. I also want to talk a little bit, we talked weeks, maybe months ago, about the state's anti-price gouging bill, the anti-price gouging part of the law that says that rents can't be increased by more than 10% in a state of emergency. The California Apartment Association has released a industry insights paper. It's about 5 pages long, talks about this. And I'll talk a little bit about it. I can also send this out for everybody who wants to take a look at it. But it's interesting to think about it, but I don't think it actually has a lot of effect on what we do on a daily basis. And then Josh will come in and give us some of his insights about the sale market, and then we can open it up for everybody. So to start with, the article in Curbed about what's really happening, is there really a mass exodus? I think the answer seems to be, if you believe what's in the article, they didn't see any statistical evidence that shows that there are enough people who are fleeing the city to have an effect on outlying areas in terms of pricing or days on the market or any other statistics that they can measure with the sale market. And we've seen some data that indicates that perhaps the rental prices are going up in those outlying areas, or in the garden areas where people are thinking, gee, I can have lots of land and a bigger house if I move 30 or 40 or 50 miles away. But it's such a large area that I'm not sure we're going to be able to get that level of information. But I think the bottom line for San Francisco is that this is the natural state of things in San Francisco. We've got booms, we've got busts, when we go boom again, we go bust again. And this will definitely change, I think, the structure of what we have to deal with in a place like San Francisco. People maybe won't be going to an office quite so often. I think employers definitely will come up with newer, innovative ways to relieve the strain. And if you believe in things like climate change, and if you believe in being smarter with the way things are done, I think in the long run, this could be a really beneficial thing in terms of rethinking, do we really need to have quite so many people commuting on BART every day to get into the city, to get to their jobs? The city still has its value. It just isn't necessarily a place where everybody has to come every single day. So I think hopefully we'll still be able to be the place that we want to be, and we'll still be able to be a vibrant community. I think density as an environmental benefit is still a useful thing that we're looking for in a place like San Francisco, in an urban environment. And so I'm definitely still positive about the future of San Francisco. This is something for us as rental housing providers that, we've got to realize that this is going to be a tough year. We're going to have vacancies that take longer to fill, or that don't fill for a very long time. We have to be realistic. If you look at what's out there on the market and your place is priced competitively, the problem is not that your price isn't low enough. Your price is fine, and you just have to be patient. You'll find the right tenant. When there used to be, thousands and thousands of people looking for apartments who actually needed to find apartments, you could count on somebody saying, well, I think this looks good enough, I'll take it. And nowadays, there aren't that many people. There aren't thousands of people. There might be dozens of people who are playing musical chairs and trying to find better places, and they have no impetus to move. So, I'm still optimistic, and I'm still counseling people. Let's be patient and see what happens. One thing that might be happening in the rental market as we go through the year, instead of having the ups and downs of the summer rush and then the fall and the winter time where demand levels out because people aren't relocating here, I think we may very well have a situation where the winter time looks a lot like what we've got right now. We've gone into a low demand sort of a period that mimics what we have with what's essentially musical chairs in the wintertime every year anyway. So we'll see what happens in the spring. We're heading towards hopefully being able to reopen. I saw a headline today that New York is reopening restaurants for dine-in service for 25% capacity, which is at the end of the month, which is a big deal. And schools will start to open hopefully before the end of the year. So, it's still interesting to see that the numbers don't bear out that people are moving in significant numbers, though I do see it in our rent collection and our data. Now, as far as my data goes, it's now the 9th of the month, so we're almost through collecting September rent. And it's very interesting. We've got 35 tenants who have asked for some sort of a deferral and have some sort of a balance. We probably have fewer than 10 that have not paid rent at all since April. Everybody else has paid something. And many of those people have fairly small past due balances. And the situations are all unique. The situations are all different. I can only, if I had to point to any people that I think might be playing games, I'm not sure I could be honest and say I think anybody's playing games with it. I think those who have decided that they are unable to pay the rent, those who don't have the money, are in situations. They work in hospitality, personal services businesses, food service, restaurant business, where it's almost certain that they're unable to work and that they can't make an income. And so, we're waiting. We have had some situations where people have come to us with, below market rents. They've been in their apartment for 10 years. We had somebody this morning who was unable to pay for 4 months. And then in July and August, they paid back half of their 4-month past due balance. Their rent is probably 30 to 40% below market. Maybe a little less than that, maybe a little more than that, 25 to 35%, call it. But they are asking, can you forgive the other 2 months? And I'm going, even in today's market, if I had the place empty and I rented it again, I'd still get a little more than what we're getting from you. And so maybe I don't want to be, I'll give you time to pay it back, but I'm not necessarily thinking we're going to make this a big thing. We're going to give you, $4,000 or $5,000 worth of rent as a credit, just as forgiveness. And so, we're taking each situation as it comes, and trying to do our best to, help people understand that we're running a business, and at the same time, we don't want to put anybody on the street as a result of this. And evictions are not an option right now anyway. But that's not a direction that we would typically go, even if that was available to us. Josh,
have you seen? I came across a story from a friend of who rented an apartment at the peak of the market. It's paying a high rate. The landlord preemptively came to them and offered a 25% discount on that rent, with no other distress signals sent out by this tenant at all. The landlord just kind of came forward and said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you 25% off. I really want you to stay. I hope everything works out." Have you heard anything like that? That people are like getting in front of?
Yeah, we've certainly heard of that.
Okay.
In situations where we have, units that we rented in the past year or so,
Yeah.
and we look at the rent and go, gee, we did really well on that one a year ago, and
Yeah.
now we're thinking, you know, uh, they might not stay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have. We've certainly had discussions about getting in front of it in that way and seeing if we can make a deal.
Yeah.
But I'm not really inclined to start contacting everybody. I've got too many tenants
Right.
to make that worthwhile. And on a individual basis, yes, it can be useful. Bert.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that back to the curbed article, the city is serious about bringing in congestion pricing, and that will certainly incentivize people moving into the inner core.
Right, right. And I think moving into the inner core is certainly a worthwhile goal because it makes it more environmentally sustainable for people to get from point A to point B. And it'll be very interesting to see how this affects our policies, how this affects the way San Francisco looks. There certainly are not. It certainly isn't a situation where we have nothing positive that has come from it. I really do feel like the rapid transformation of restaurants for outdoor dining has been very interesting, and restaurants have always been a difficult, low margin business. And maybe that's something that we do more regularly. Maybe that's something that becomes a part of our civic fabric. Maybe not in the wintertime, but maybe that'll be a part of. We don't really have seasons that change in San Francisco, but maybe that'll be something we start to see. The parking starts to go away a little bit, and people start setting out those tables in April or May. And Bert's got his thumbs up, and he likes that idea. And but I think it's certainly been a welcome respite for those of us who like to go out for dinner, to be able to go out and have the weather be nice, except for this crazy day today with the orange sky. But yeah, I think maybe this will be the catalyst to give flight to some of Bert's density and transit priorities here. So with that, I'll unless we have other questions or comments about those issues, I'll move on to the anti-price gouging law. The California Apartment Association put out a position paper, a general overview about California's price controls. Essentially, what's interesting to me about this is that, as rent-controlled housing providers, we get put in a situation where your rent is artificially lowered after you've had a tenant for a couple of years. And the price gouging rule says that you're not allowed to increase the rent by 10% from tenancy to tenancy. Or I'll get to your question, Tom, in a minute, but the rule says you're not allowed to increase the rent by 10%. And it's sort of a blunt force tool for a fine-pointed issue, because it means if you have a tenant who leaves after 30 years and their rent was 20% of fair market value, you can't raise the rent by more than 10% above that. And what's interesting is, certainly with the wildfires, I would certainly see how in those communities, if you have homes for rent that are still available and haven't been affected, they want to keep people from saying, well, it used to be worth $2,500 or $3,000, and now I'm going to go to $4,000 or $5,000. That would be price gouging. But operating in our rent-controlled environment, in a circumstance where your unit is going to be at fair market value when you put it on the market, and we're operating in a circumstance where demand for housing is tremendously low anyway. I just don't know if this is necessarily going to be something that we're going to find people getting in trouble for, because I'm not sure, number one, I'm not sure anybody's actually harmed by operating in good faith in using our fair market policies. At the same time, the penalty for this is basically a lawsuit that would come from any number of different places. It could come from the Attorney General if you're big enough. It could come from any private party. But essentially, it's a $10,000 fine and up to a year in jail, and then you could be sued for unfair business practices under the Business and Professions Code, I think it is. And nobody wants to get into a lawsuit, but I also think for any of us operating our business as normal, it's highly unlikely that anybody, who's going to say that you're violating the law and then decide to file a lawsuit because you're simply raising your rent to fair market. So, I'm going to work a little bit more to find out from our attorneys what they're thinking. Nobody really has a consensus on what the best things to do here really are. But at this point, I don't see any harm in continuing to operate our business as it's always been. And we'll get some more legal advice, but the big issue is that we don't have a lot of demand, and it's been kind of a long process of trying to establish what the market really is. Landlords are hesitant to reduce their prices, and they believe in the value of their units. And so that's pretty much it on that. It looks like, so Tom had a question. Hi, Tom, thanks for joining us. Anybody have a reliable number on how many SF renters have left the city this year? And I don't have any specific numbers, though Antonio looks like did some digging around. It says the number of people seeking price estimates to move out of the Bay Area from the moving industry was 46% higher this year than in 2019 for Unigroup, which owns companies United Van Lines and Mayflower. And then another item here in the chat says, speaking of demand, the demand score, relative interest in San Francisco's sale listings compared to other markets on Realtor.com has dropped 83 points since January, from 89 to 6 on a 100-point scale. And it speaks to a lot of the reasons why people move here. They're moving here for work, and when work doesn't make you move here, maybe you don't want to be here so much, or they're moving here for startups and entrepreneurialism and new opportunities, and all of those things are also more face-to-face than online. And now people can do those things online. So if you want to take a look at those articles, they're in the chat to me. Actually, it looks like I can also add this. I'll add this to the general chat if anybody's interested. Thank you, Antonio, for your quick Googleifying. Yeah, so that's what I have. And once again, next week we'll have more from Denise about AB 3088 and how we can handle that issue. But the difficulty when this all started, my issue was how many people are not going to pay the rent. And when after we got a few months into this, we had some of it, we dealt with it, and it's sort of at a fixed level. We've got a number of people who haven't been able to pay rent at all for months and months and months. But the bigger issue is that we have vacancies that we can't fill, and lowering the price only will attract people from one building to another, and it's sort of a zero-sum game. Being patient is always important, and the other really important thing, I was talking to a prospective client about this. I know I've talked to my staff about this. Making sure that we don't look at our screening criteria for credit score, income, landlord references as being something that we want to relax just to fill units. It's really important that we rely on that we stick with those numbers, because those are, first of all, they keep us from having fair housing complaints. And second of all, they have been successful for us for many, many years. For my whole career, we haven't really changed those mechanisms, those thresholds of 640 FICO score, 3 times the monthly rent, and gross verifiable income, and good references from prior landlords. And we have some ways to make room for people who maybe are missing one of those by adding a guarantor. But when it's painful, it's even more important not to say, well, let's just squeak by with 2 times the income, because it means your tenants are going to have to choose between, buying their groceries and paying your rent. And which one's going to lose out. And I'd rather have these units empty altogether and not paying rent than having people in them that you've just rented to who are not paying rent. So with that, let me turn this over to Josh and let him take it away with some sale market insights. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. So right now, I spend a lot of time looking at the San Francisco market in the 5+ building range. And, you know, in the beginning, I was talking about, hey, keep an eye out for deals that have great cap rates. I thought cap rates were going to go up. They are going up. I thought they were going to, you know, that was where the opportunity was going to be, in a high cap rate, higher return deals. And what I'm finding is interesting. So you know, the cap rates are going up, but they're based on scheduled income as opposed to actual income. The reason all these cap rates are based on scheduled income is because every building has vacancies. And so I'm seeing, you know, 70+ buildings on the market, and I was looking for one that was full, that had that was fully leased up. I could not find one. So that was pretty shocking to me, that all these buildings are coming out and they have vacancies and they're sitting. So, you know, these cap rates are going up based on this scheduled income, this supposed market rate income that you can get on these empty units, but the buildings are not selling. Why are they not selling? Do you want a building with 25% vacancy at this time? So I think what's happening in San Francisco is buildings are sitting, and over the last 9 days, I've seen not one new listing come out. So I think everybody was kind of pressing and saying, hey, you know, it's still 2019, it's still 2019. I'm going to put these market rents in there and I can sell the building based on that cap rate. And I think what a lot of people are finding is they can't. And so I think there's going to be a lot less inventory coming out. And it's a little bit grim in San Francisco in that sense. I just can't really, you know, I can't recommend, unless someone's going to take a really, really deep discount and price in that risk on filling that vacancy. I'm, you know, I can't really recommend a lot of these buildings. That being said, in the East Bay, it's a little different. So we're not seeing the same levels of vacancies in the East Bay. Units are, you know, buildings are filling up. However, a lot of buildings still have vacancies. So one thing that I've been paying attention to is I actually, you know, I'm actually looking for under market rents. I'm actually looking for buildings with you know, 30% under market rents. So these are tenants who've been there for a while. They're protected by rent control. They have an affordable rent rate, and they can kind of stay in there. Then I'm looking for a big upside off of that. And so, because I think that's the only way I'd buy a building right now, is if there were kind of under, you know, a fair amount of under market rents, 1 or 2 vacancies, let's say in the 12-unit building, but you know, I could see a pathway to filling that unit. So there's a building for me. JJ, if you could do share screen.
Yep.
Do you see this one?
Hang on. There you go. All right, you should be ready. Go ahead.
So this is a building in Berkeley, priced at $5.8 million. Beautiful building, 1960s.
It's not showing up. Hold on.
It's not? Okay.
It says, who can share? All participants. Go ahead and hit the screen share button again.
Got it.
There we go.
Okay.
Great. Cool.
So this is again Berkeley. This is near campus. University housing over by Cal is having a lot of trouble. There are no Cal students to rent these places. So student housing is hurting. This is kind of, I'd say this is professional / student housing here in this building. This is a 1960 construction, very nice building, 15 units, prime location, nice unit mix of 800 square feet, 600 square foot, 1-bedroom, 1-bath units. I'm just going to kind of move through this. You kind of see the quality of the units here, which is really nice.
Those are nice.
Right near downtown, near the campus. And so because over here, if you see this, can you see my cursor here circling gross scheduled income? So everybody writes in their scheduled income of what they can get. And so I just wanted to get to this page here. So, with this building, you have 3 vacant units out of, I don't know, I guess there's an illegal unit, so it's 16 units. But if you look at where the market rents are for these units and what they're all paying, for the occupied units, there's a nice buffer there. These are affordable, kind of what the tenants are currently paying compared to what the market will get if they move, is fair and reasonable. So you have what feels like a kind of a stable batch of tenants here. So that's attractive. The 3 vacants, like I said, in the East Bay, I'm not seeing the same problems in terms of renting units. I just rented a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in Oakland for $2,600 with pretty solid applicants looking at it. And so, nice buildings with good amenities, parking in nice areas are renting better here. And so, with these 3 units, the agent's putting them at $32.95. I would be writing an offer and I'd underwrite that at closer to $28.95, and my numbers would need to make sense. I would, I'd be less aggressive on that number. But this is an example of, a deal in the East Bay that would make sense to me. This doesn't scare me as much as if the exact same rent roll was in San Francisco. I'd be more nervous about these 3 vacants, but here I'm less so. One thing that happened for a building of ours we have under management in El Cerrito, we had in the past we had tenants who were coming from Berkeley, Cal Berkeley, looking for a nice price discount from Berkeley prices and going over to El Cerrito, and we were renting that unit regularly with that group of people. We lost that group of people. We lost those Cal students, and it was interesting. It kind of fell into this other group where we're having all these unqualified applicants, and so the drop was precipitous. It was steep in terms of the quality of applicants we were getting, and so that was tougher to rent. But in Berkeley, in better parts of Oakland, you're not seeing that drop. You're seeing 10%, 15% rent drops, and still, a good quality of tenant, still a good quality of applicants coming in. So the East Bay is certainly, long story short, the East Bay is more interesting to me as a buyer. I'm just kind of waiting it out on San Francisco. If San Francisco is, if I can find a full building with 30% below market rents, I'd be more interested. But right now, there's too many vacancies. But in the East Bay, it's a little better. And
Josh, what do you make of the fact that the listing agent has shown that there are 5 units that are rented in 2019 and another 2 that were rented this year, and they're underwriting every one of those units as being below market, even the 2 that were rented this year. There's one in February of 2020 that they're saying was rented for $25.50, and now they're saying underwriting that as being $32.95. Like, would they have really rented it for $25.50 if they could have gotten $32.95?
Right. So they got this unit 16 here at $33.95, and they've pegged everything to kind of that number.
Right.
Maybe it's not renovated.
Right.
Is probably what happened there. It's probably a little more beat.
Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable explanation.
Yeah, that's probably the reason there. But yeah, I mean, this is a rent roll I can work with.
Yeah, well, it certainly gives you some room to make sure that the tenants that you have aren't going anywhere, and if they do, when they do, there might be upside.
Right.
And yeah, and you're
And
not.
it's not solo. It's
Yeah.
not solo. You're with all lifers.
Right.
You know, you have one here in unit 11
Right.
that will live in that unit forever. You have one in 15 as well. But you know, 2 is kind of par for the course in Berkeley and in San Francisco. 2 out of a building this size is par for the course.
Great. That's an interesting opportunity. Thank you very much for bringing that to us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's always interesting when something comes on the market and it's actually there's something good about it. So yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to open it up if anybody has questions or comments or other topics to discuss. I'm happy to discuss them. Let me know if you are if you have any other pressing questions, things you want to discuss one-on-one. Always happy to be there to chat. And yeah, thank you for joining us again this week. And I'll be back next week for another call, and we'll hopefully have Denise.
Bert.
Bert. Yes, go ahead, Bert.
Yeah, just a quick observation. As San Francisco is kind of leading the Bay Area in opening up again now, do you have any feelings for when will they be opening the offices up again? Because that will bring in new demand, possibly.
Yeah, that would. It would. I think that will probably be a fairly late thing. You know, it's the kind of thing where the government may very well say that we are able to, you know, reopen schools or businesses, restaurants, hair salons, personal services, things like that. But people's ability to embrace that may be limited. You know, people's ability to say, well, yeah, I'm going to go out for, you know, to eat in a restaurant inside. You know, everybody's still afraid. And part of the essential tension that we've had in this pandemic has been the disconnect. People are railing against, you know, taking away my freedom and I want to be able to do what I want. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who are less outspoken, who are also paying attention to the facts, who are saying, yeah, I don't feel like getting on an airplane right now. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun to go sit in a crowded bar and watch football this weekend. Not a place I want to be. I think I'll stay home where I'm not going to get sick. And I feel like, you know, the companies as well, they may decide, you know, they want to open or they may be allowed to open their doors, but at the same time, their employees may not be willing to do it.
Well, they're opening the offices versus the bars. They're opening them up in a degree that's already been approved, you know, when they do open up. In other words, how they space seats and have the separations and things like that. That's not where, like a bar, where it almost invites every kind of violation possible to do it. So I'm thinking that will probably be, you know, we're talking about in 2 weeks now, possibly opening up public schools. Right. I thought it was going to be later October, but that's much earlier. And if people like the partiers over Labor Day don't end up with a you know, reverse turn, San Francisco's tracking to have the next step within the next month or so. So that was why I was thinking we may be able to open the offices up, but that would still be far earlier than the bars and things, because the offices don't want to deal with the liability, for one thing.
Right.
So,
That's true.
Can I just make one comment, JJ?
Go ahead.
I'm here. I'm in Marin. I'm a residential realtor in Marin, have been for a long time, but I just took a look at the San Francisco condo market. I apologize for the typos I made in my little.
Okay.
But at any rate, basically it's of all condos, entire city, about 31% are under contract, which in conventional wisdom, 35% is somewhere between 30 and 35% is a balanced market. But that market has been suffering an accumulation of inventory also, as people, I think, who bought, say, the typical $1 million or less condo in the last 4 or 5 years are trying to figure out what to do. And some of them are trying to move out. So, and the ripple effect is, you know, Marin County, Sonoma County are seeing a big surge in demand for housing right now. And I think it's a lot of fear-based buying that the market will run away from them because everybody's looking for something with some space and all that. So, all this could change rapidly if we get a vaccine, and or when we get a vaccine, I should say. And so I don't know. These are just comments, but I think the realtors that I've talked to are concerned about the condo market in the city a little bit, and they may be doing some happy talk about it, but the reality is maybe not that good. So that's all.
Well, and what's interesting is it seems like the housing sales, the condos and single family homes didn't take a dip for quite a bit longer than what we had anticipated, and certainly what we saw in the apartment market. And it's because there's less friction to the transition from your apartment to a house or a condo. Buying property takes time. Buying property is challenging. Buying property takes money. Buying property takes a lot of thought. Renting a place is a 1-year commitment at most. Right. And you can leave with 30 days notice and go wherever you want, be free to take advantage of the market. And so, it's interesting to hear you say that the data indicates that the condo market in San Francisco may be faltering, and I could totally see why. I mean, a lot of the money that comes from that fuels that market is people moving here who have jobs that are good enough that they can pay for a mortgage instead of rent, or that they have enough cash in hand, and people just aren't moving here right now. But I have had some situations where I've seen tenants moving out and saying they're buying places, even here in San Francisco, which is interesting.
Well, I don't want to represent myself as really understanding exactly what's happening in San Francisco right now. That's just a data point that's,
31%.
The pending rate, pending sales.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, it's all, I think, condos were the first to take the hit in this pandemic for sure, because of not contracting the virus while you're walking to your unit in a enclosed hallway. So density is a bad word, and it's going to remain a bad word until we get a vaccine for sure. And so unfortunately, condos have they bear the brunt of that pain. In the East Bay as well, both sides of the bay, the condo market is hurting. It's not, completely dead, but it's down. It's down.
Right. There'll be some reductions before a deal comes together sometimes, right? So yeah, and you're definitely seeing a lot of price discounts. You're seeing a lot of, I'm seeing a lot of price reductions on condos, but not fire sale prices either. Right.
So it's not like out of control.
Yeah, that's my impression as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we really enjoy these meetings, and one of these days I'm going to get John on the call. I'm working on it. That's my brother.
Oh, I am on.
Oh, great. Oh, there he is.
John.
Great.
Excellent. Yeah, I can't tell who the phone numbers are. I have a sneaking suspicion about. I've got 2 of them, and I know who the other one is. So now I know who both are. So anyway, it's good to have you. With that, unless anybody else has questions or comments or ideas they want to share, it's good having you, and thank you for the active discussion. And it's good seeing everybody. I wish we could see you in person more often, but we'll have to handle our business with weekly calls, and it's good to see everybody. So thank you for joining us, and take care. Have a good week, and hopefully the skies will clear at some point soon and we'll have sunshine again. All right.
Thank you
take care.
very much. Bye-bye.
Take care.